Welcome back to Hudson Appliance in beautiful downtown Hudson, Massachusetts for another episode of Wicked Good Food. I'm your host, Matt Williams, and today it's all about butternut squash. Butternut squash is one of these squashes that shows up in the fall, as it should, because that's when it's ready. But one of the cool things about these winter squash is that they're really hard. If you think about like zucchini or yellow squash, they're soft. They don't last very long. But you think about a butternut, or you think about a pumpkin, or you think about an acorn squash, they're all kind of in the same family. They're firm and they last for quite a while. When you go to the refrigerator, when you go to the supermarket to look at them, usually they're not in the refrigerator. They don't need to be refrigerated. Keep them in a cool, dry place. You want to pick ones that are heavy for their size. It shouldn't feel light, because then you know something's going on inside. A couple little blemishes or scratches are okay, but you want to make sure there's no real soft spots or anything like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this butternut. We're going to make 4 different dishes. I'm going to teach you how to break it down. We're going to make a real simple roasted butternut squash that's great as a side. We're going to use that same butternut squash to make a crostini using this baguette here with some goat cheese and some sweetened dried cranberries and some fresh thyme on it. We're also going to make a pasta dish with a sage cream sauce, some of our butternut squash, some of the roasted butternut squash, some fried sage, some Italian sausage as well. We're going to get going with our crostini. So to make our crostini, I'm going to take this baguette and I just want to slice it. This is a nice fresh baguette that I got this morning. It doesn't have to be super fresh though. If you're going to use it for a crostini, you're going to toast it and dry it out. Don't worry if you have this is a perfect use actually for a loaf of old bread. So I just want to do it in kind of rounds. Going for about 1/3 of an inch thick or so. You could make them thinner if you wanted, thicker if you wanted. It all kind of depends on what you want your finished product to be. But I'm kind of thinking of these being served as an appetizer. And that should be enough. I'm going to grab a sheet pan here, a cookie sheet, and just take and spread these out on here. And this, you don't have to make these if you don't want. You could make this dish with some Triscuits. You could make it with some bagel chips or anything you want, but I like to make my own, especially if you have some leftover bread. I'm going to take and drizzle some extra virgin olive oil over these. Just a little bit on top of them. What that's going to do is going to obviously provide a little bit of fat, but it's going to give a little something for the salt and pepper that I put on them to stick to. Spread it just a little bit on some of these. I'm going to hit it with a pinch of salt. And some fresh ground black pepper. And that's it. I'm going to pop these in an oven. The oven's actually at 350 degrees. So what's going to happen is these are going to brown on the outside, but they'll still have a little bit of moisture in the middle, and that's what I want. If you wanted them completely dehydrated, you'd want to turn your oven down to 250 or so that by the time they start to brown, most of the moisture from inside is evaporated. So I'll stick these in the oven. We'll come back over here, and I'm going to work on our butternut squash. So here's a butternut squash. Might be a little bit intimidating to grab if you don't know what to do, but it's pretty simple. If you think of it kind of like a pumpkin, most people have carved a pumpkin. Down here is like the inside of a pumpkin. There's seeds, but this is all hollow. This is all solid, excuse me. So what I'm going to do is take and cut the top off and cut the bottom off. If you don't have a nice sharp knife, a serrated knife will actually be helpful to do this. You could use a knife and take it and peel it and try to peel down the edges if you want, but you can use a peeler just as well. And take it and just peel down the side. I like to hold it down like this so I can peel all around. And what you'll notice, let me peel a little bit of it back here for you, is see how you can see it's a little bit yellowish here and there's some green lines coming through here. You want to make sure you remove all that, all those green lines, and get down to where it's nice and orange. And we don't actually need this whole squash, so I won't go through the process of peeling the whole thing, but I do want to show you what's inside. And you can see that it's a little bit of a bulb here at the bottom. So I'm looking for a spot to cut right where that bulb begins. So I'm going to cut right through here. And you'll see that this is solid. This is all solid squash. So you could peel this down and just dice it. You cut it in circles, roast it like that. It's kind of a neat way to do it, is to roast a whole circle of it. Here, I'm going to cut this in half. And this is where I was saying it's kind of like the inside of a pumpkin almost. So I'm going to take my spoon and just use the spoon to remove the seeds. Just like so, and then go back and just kind of shave off any extra of that. And then we're going to take all these seeds actually, and we're going to throw them in this water over here. We'll come back to this in a few minutes, but we're going to actually make some butternut squash seeds, just like you'd make pumpkin seeds. But you get the general idea of how to clean the squash. So I'll show you how to cut it. So I have one that's all cleaned here. And so for what we're doing, we're looking for a dice similar to these over here. So I'm going to take it, put the fattest side on the bottom. Actually, that's rolling around a little bit. I'm going to put the other side down. And I'm going to cut it into planks. So this is actually my favorite way to have butternut. A lot of times you go to places, you go for Thanksgiving and people have butternut squash that's all pureed and sometimes with marshmallows on top, and that is a good time, loaded up with sugar and things. But I really like the taste of the squash. I like it when you can bite into it, and there's a little bit of resistance when you bite into it. So that's what we're going to make here. You could actually take these pieces like so and roast them just like this and serve this, or make a dish and put like a piece of fish on top of this or something like that to make a nice big stack of food, whatever you may be doing. But we're going to cube this up. So in addition to our crostini, we're going to use the same roasted squash in the pasta, which is great that you could actually make this in advance and serve it cold as we could do on this crostini, or you could just reheat it really quickly. But here we go with some diced squash ready to go. And I think this will be enough. I'm not going to cut the other half. And so then I'm going to grab my other sheet pan here and dump out our cubed butternut on it. Now my favorite way to do this is exactly what we're about to do. I'm going to drizzle it with some extra virgin olive oil, some maple syrup, some salt, and some fresh ground black pepper. Now, depending on what you're going to do with this, there's a bunch of other things you could throw in there. You could throw in some cinnamon. You could throw in some sweetened dried cranberries. One of the chefs I work with actually made a dish today that he had this roasted and threw sweetened dried cranberries, and when it was all done, threw baby spinach on top. And the baby spinach wilted and gave this great burst of color and great flavor. But since we're going to use this for a few different things, I don't want to go too crazy with it. Just want to toss it around and get it well coated. So we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to pop this in the oven and roast it. I'm going to clean up our mess, and we'll come back and get ready to keep working on our projects. All right, so our crostini are just about done. I'm going to pull them out of the oven. You can see here that they're just starting to brown a little bit around the edges, and you can probably hear it, that they're crunchy, but if I push the middle, they still have a little bit of give to them. That's exactly what we're looking for here with these. So I'm going to take these and just move them back here. Want to let those come to room temperature. Here, in case you hear some sizzling, I just have some sweet Italian sausage. That's going to be part of our pasta dish. And I just have it, I'm going to let it brown and then we'll flip it over. So before we get into our pasta dish, I want to finish with these seeds. So I have that middle membrane thing here, and I pulled it out of the water, and I'm just finishing pulling the seeds out of it. So this isn't loaded with seeds like you'd see in a pumpkin, but still you can do the same thing with them. So what we're going to do is strain these. Grab my strainer. And I'm going to pull out any real obvious pieces of squash that are in there. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to simmer these. So that's how you ever have peanuts that are salted in the shell, or sunflower seeds or something that are salted in the shell. What they do is they simmer them in salted water. So we learned about osmosis. We're always looking for moving to a less concentration. So we're going to have some super salty water here. So I'm going to salt it now. Pretty salty. Let this come back up to a boil, and then I'm going to take that and the other seeds. One of the beauties of working on the induction range, I don't know if you saw how quickly this thing just came back to a boil, but I just turned it all the way up. Boom, we're back at a boil. I'm going to dump our seeds right in. Make sure I get them all in there. We're going to let these simmer for about 10 minutes. So we're going to take another quick break so I can get cleaned up. When we come back, these will be done simmering, and we're going to start making our butternut squash pasta dish. Okay, welcome back. So our sausage has shrunken a little bit. It's sizzling really well. It's on a relatively high heat. I want to get some color on there. So our seeds here have had a chance to simmer for 10 minutes or so. So now I'm going to take those and grab my strainer and just strain the liquid out. Most of it at least. And grab another bowl here. Perfect. All right. So now I'm going to take these, just knock off any extra moisture that's on there. Dump them right on a sheet pan. So at this point, if you wanted, you could season them some more, salt and pepper, or you could put rosemary on them or herbs or whatever, but we're going to leave them just as is. Pop them in the same oven that our squash is in. Squash is just starting to get soft. It hasn't browned at all, so we're looking okay there. All right, so sizzling hot sausage here. So Arthur heard me talking about the induction stove, and he said, hey, you know what I usually do when I do a demo? And just to show how this works, and the way it works is that this stovetop doesn't actually get hot. What it does is it generates a magnetic field, and it makes the iron in the pan vibrate. When it vibrates, it actually makes the pan get hot. So check this out. He threw this under here easy 10 minutes ago, but there's a $100 bill there. And this isn't a joke. It's not, well, I guess it's kind of like magic, but I can just pick this up and grab it, and it's been underneath this pan for so long. I don't know what he plans to do with this, but I have some ideas, so I'll just put it right here. But I'm going to grab this sausage and move this out of the way. I'm just going to put the sausage on this cutting board. And then for our pasta dish, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to cut it into little strips, because I want there to be kind of like cubes of sausage. Then I'm going to take these, cut them into little cubes. All right, so we're going to take a super quick break while I just mix this up, and we're going to go ahead and make the pasta dish. All right, so I cleaned up our mess a little bit. We're going to start our pasta dish by cutting this. This is a shallot. So shallots are in the onion family. They're a little more mild than onion. They kind of have a little bit of a garlicky flavor, but you treat them very similar to how you would an onion. So the peel came off super easy for me. I'm going to cut it just like we cut onions, because I want this to be a pretty fine dice here. And then I'm going to turn and cut perpendicular to that first cut. Because I don't want big chunks in our sauce. I don't mind that there's some little chunks. This isn't going to be a super, super smooth sauce, and that's okay. But I don't want really, really big chunks. I just want this flavor to kind of infuse with the rest of the dish. So I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit on our pan. I'm going to add some extra virgin olive oil, just enough to coat the bottom of the pan. And then we're going to add our shallots. So we want this to just start to cook. You know, I'm going to crank it up since we're talking about an induction, and we'll see how quickly this will start to bubble. You can actually see it starting to bubble and hear it already. So the next thing I'm going to add, so we're making a sage cream sauce. We're going to add sage right to this. We're going to let some of the sage fry right in this olive oil. We don't need a ton of it, and I'm going to chiffonade it, which is the word for a julienne of a leafy green. So we're going to make pretty thin pieces here. All right, so we're not looking to brown this at all. All we're looking to do, so I'm going to turn our heat down a little bit actually. All we're looking to do is to sweat it. We're looking for some of the juices from the shallot to come out. I'm going to go ahead and add our sage to it. Mix this around a bit. And you'll see it's going to turn a beautiful bright color. Unfortunately, we're going to lose that bright color because it's going to end up cooking with everything else, so it's going to give it a flavor. We'll put some more fresh sage on top when we're all done for the color. And it looks pretty good. You can see that they're starting to turn translucent. So the next step in the process here is we're going to add some white wine. So the white wine's going to add some acidity to our sauce. It's also going to add some moisture so that it's not all cream. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can actually hear our seeds behind me popping. So that's a really good indication that it's time to check our seeds. So I'm going to go over to the oven. Hear that snap, crackle, pop? I don't know if we'll get another one to pop while we're sitting here. But now they're all done. That's perfect. So that's a really good indication. I forgot to mention that. But when you hear them start popping, that's a good indication that you're all set. So I'm going to stick these back here. Now we're going to come back to our pasta dish. I'm going to add our white wine. And this will start to simmer. And it deglazes the bottom of the pan. Anything that was sticking on the bottom of that pan has now been released. That's looking pretty good. Now to that, I'm going to add heavy cream. No one said this was a light and healthy dish. So heavy cream is kind of cool that you can actually cook it and it will reduce. It generally doesn't break, meaning separate the fat from the rest of it. So we can cook this for a while. Moisture will come out of it and it'll actually get thicker. It'll make our sauce a little bit thicker. So we can raise our heat up a little bit more here. Then, as with everything, we want to season with some fresh ground black pepper. And some salt. Now this will boil over if you're not careful, so you want to just keep an eye on it. So while this is cooking, I want to go back to the oven. So in the oven we have our butternut squash. I just want to check it. It's almost time to add it. So we'll come over and check that out. And it looks pretty good. Let me feel. Yeah, it's pretty soft. And this is good for what we're going to do. If you wanted it to be really caramely, you could throw it back in or have it a higher temperature. But for what we're going to add to our pasta, which we're going to do in just a second, this is what we want. So I'm going to actually, at this point, take some of our butternut and put it right in with our sauce. Just like that. And we'll move this out of the way. So also into our sauce, the thing that's cool about this is it's a one-pot meal. Once you have all your prep done, everything's going in one pot, the whole meal. We're going to add our sausage, depending on how much sausage you want to add. And then we're going to add our pasta. So we're using fettuccine tonight. So this is already fully cooked. You could cook this a couple days in advance, toss it with a little oil, and just leave it in the refrigerator until you're ready to use it. This sauce is not quite as thick as I want it to be, but that's okay. I'm going to add cold pasta to it. By the time the pasta heats up, more of this will have evaporated, and this will have actually absorbed a little bit of the sauce. I'll toss it around a little bit, grab our straggler. So we're going to let this simmer for 3 or 4 minutes, and then we're going to get Arthur up here. We're going to finish our crostini, and we'll see what he thinks of butternut squash today. Yeah. I'll do. All right, so it's crostini time now. So we've got the bread we did before. Like I was showing you, there's a little bit of give to them, but you can hear a little crunch to them. What we're going to do is actually take and use a spoon. I'm going to just smush this goat cheese a little bit to grab a little bit. Put it in the center and just smush it and spread it around. This is a great thing that you could bring to a party or something like that. One of the things that's neat about putting the cheese on the bottom is the cheese is actually a fat. And what it'll do is it'll protect the bread from getting soggy from any other ingredients you put on there. It's like making a sandwich. There's a whole art to making a sandwich so it'll last through a day. I'm sure we all can remember peanut butter and jelly sandwiches when we were a kid, and you go to eat them and the bread has actually turned purple from the jelly. But there's a way you can build that sandwich that will last all day and still have nice bread. That's what we're doing here. That's why we put the cheese on the bottom. So if we wanted, we could take our butternut squash next and actually smush the butternut, if we wanted, into a paste on there and kind of mix it with the cheese a little. I don't think that looks as cool as chunks, but just to show you, you could do that too. You could actually blend your goat cheese and your squash together as a paste and put it on there. But we're going to put a couple sweetened dried cranberries on there and just a couple leaves of fresh thyme. Just the leaves. We don't want the stems. Just put a couple leaves on, just like that. So I'll make another one without crushing our squash. We'll put our goat cheese on. This would be outstanding with a really strong blue cheese as well. You could even use cream cheese and season it with something, or like Boursin cheese. But something that's spreadable on there. And then we'll get some of our squash. This could be served hot or cold. This squash is still warm. You could put it out just like this. You could save these. I wouldn't have these hang out more than a couple hours. But if you weren't traveling very far, you could make these in advance and bring them to someone else's house. You could even put your cheese on them a little bit in advance. But they're beautiful. It's a great contrast in colors. If you don't like thyme, don't use thyme. You can put a different herb on there. I always tell my students it's easier to work like you're in one of Henry Ford's factories and you're on the production line and you do the same task over and over. It makes much more sense as far as efficiency to go and put the cheese on all of them and then to come back and then we'll do all the squash. So we'll make 4 of them here real quick. But I love this. I love the contrast in color. The red and the orange they're obviously colors that are found in nature, but we don't see them this bright in our food all that often. And it's cool. A little touch of green on there. Can't beat it. So I'm going to make the rest of these. We'll plate everything up. We'll call Arthur up here, and we'll get him to taste our many different butternut creations. Hey, Arthur.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks again for having me here at Hudson Appliance.
You're always welcome. You know that. Especially because you bring this.
All right.
You make this.
Is butternut squash. We've got 4 different little things here.
All right.
So this is a very simple roasted butternut squash. And we actually took this roasted butternut squash and used it in this dish and used it in this dish.
Okay.
So it's something you could make and serve as a side, but then you could also save it, whatever's left over, and then make either of these or a bunch of other things.
Sounds good.
Also, have you ever had butternut squash seeds?
No.
Just like pumpkin seeds. Go ahead and give one a whirl. We simmered them in some salty water, so should it be salted?
Oh, they're delicious.
Yeah, a little crunch to them too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that'd be nice, night watching TV, having a few of those.
It's crunchy like popcorn and better for you.
Yep.
You want to try one of these?
Sure.
So this is simply roasted with some extra virgin
You don't
olive
mind me using
oil.
my fingers, right?
Go right ahead. Salt, pepper, and a little bit of maple syrup.
I love butternut squash.
It's fantastic, and I really like it like this. I mean, I like the pureed stuff that you get a lot of times at big family meals, but I think there's something to be said for this. Still has it's cooked, but there's still a little bit of bite to it. It's not totally mush, you know?
Yep. Let's try this over here. This
Okay.
looks good. Now tell me, is that cranberries on there?
It is. It's the sweetened dried cranberries, some goat cheese, and a little bit of fresh thyme.
Oh, phenomenal.
The little bit of bite that goat cheese has goes really well with the super sweetness of the cranberry and the squash.
Now, I want to try this, but this is kind of difficult to eat
This is going to be a little challenging, right?
Yeah, on camera. So, beginning on me.
So this is fettuccine, roasted butternut squash, sage, shallots, thyme. What do you think?
Now that's wicked good.
Anyone else notice I totally screwed up and I dumped my water into the wine that I had all measured out for the pasta? That's why it didn't fit. But I'm gonna pretend like this is white wine. It's not. We'll make it work. No worries. This is still like, and I don't know what I was thinking. I saw it there and I'm like, why would I have some water there? It's like, well, all right, I'll pour it in there. At least the glass won't shatter. Sure.